Welcome to Insider's Inside podcast, where we dissect everything social media. I'm Teodora Lozanzas, marketer at Social Insider, and your host for this show, excited to get into the nitty-gritty of everything social media. I'll talk to social media professionals that work in freelance, in-house for a company, and in an agency environment to get the best of all worlds. Which is a nicer way of saying we'll snoop around and see how others do it. Let's jump in. In this episode, we'll have a deep dive into TikTok marketing with Laura Savo, Global Community Manager at TikTok. Laura has been juggling marketing and social media since 2012. She's worked for some big brands such as Coca-Cola or Philip Morris, but has also had the agency perspective while at Mueller Lowe. For the past year, she's taking on the challenge of being Global Community Manager at TikTok, the rising star among social media platforms. Throughout it all, social media has been her first language, while strategy, planning, and influencer marketing made up her playground. Welcome, Laura. How are you?
Hey, Theodora, thank you very much for the nice welcoming. All good today. How about you?
I'm actually very excited to talk to you, especially because we're going to be talking about TikTok, and not many people know too much insight about this platform. But to start off, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. How did you start your career? What was your path?
Uh, it's quite funny, I would say, because it was kind of straightforward from the beginning. Actually, I wanted to do movie directing when I was in high school. And then I thought, hey, what's the most relatable area that I could fit into? And then it came down to marketing. So I went to the university studying marketing, and I was part in some projects with the students associations. And that's how I ended up working in the agency. And in the first 2 months, I was working in client service, which I'm sorry, but it's not for me. Yeah, and then into the creative area on strategy and planning for social media for different kind of brands.
What agency was that? The one that you first started working at?
It was called Senior Hyper, and it was the digital agency part of Mullen Lowe Profaro because they switched names afterwards.
And how did you switch to the creative area? Did you just ask them, I just want to do this, or was there a process? And
No, actually, the proposal came down from their side, so from the manager of the agency, because I was always sending links and stuff with interesting things or different strategies or examples of what the other brands are doing. We could do something similar to the creatives, and probably they noticed me, and I was afraid to speak on the phone.
I see. So after the agency, you went straight to the client side, or did that take a while?
Yeah, I went actually, I was still in the agency, and my mom saw a job on LinkedIn coming from Coca-Cola. So projects from the university, they used to have previous participants in the projects who would come and speak up to the newbies. And I met a guy. He was back then working for L'Oreal, and then he switched to Coca-Cola. So when I saw the announcement for the job at Coke, I actually reached out to him like, hey, is this job still available? Can I still apply? And he was like, sure, go ahead. And then I applied to the job. I had several interviews, including the ones with my future manager, which was actually based in Athens. And I was kind of freaking out because they told me there's a huge number of applications that they received. And I was like, okay, what am I doing here? And then I found out that I did get the job. I should go to Athens for 1 month of training.
You dabble between working in an agency and working on the client side. How different are these two experiences?
I guess from some perspectives, they are pretty different in terms of taking the decisions regarding different projects, but also very similar to some extent because both on the agency side and on the client side, you're working towards the same goal. So for me, it was very helpful when I switched to the client side because I could understand the workload coming from the agencies and many of the frustrations that come, especially for a creative, like if you give them a very, I don't know, technical brief, that's not a brief anymore. You have to leave them space for their creativity. And I think that's the most important part, because otherwise it's just doing normal tasks on a regular basis and it's nothing creative anymore. So you still need to be up to date with everything. From the client's perspective, it's nice because you have an overview, about the projects that are coming up next and how you could link the pieces together, but it's kind of similar to some extent.
So do you think that because you were in an agency first and then you went to the client, it was easier to communicate? Because a lot of people have very big issues mending this bridge between the client and the agency,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of stress and miscommunication.
Yeah, that's very true. And I totally believe that the experience in the agency helped me a lot in terms of knowing how to communicate with further agencies.
So what's better, working for the client or being the client, or working in an agency from your perspective?
I think it's totally different for everyone. I've met during my career some extraordinary professionals that always wanted to work in the agency. And on the other side, I've met people that always have wanted to work for a client and they're more satisfied on that side. In the very beginning, I always used to say, especially to my dad, that I'm a person of agency, because I like having a split focus on different kind of projects and different brands because it's more challenging. But once I actually did the switch, I realized that the client world is much more appealing for me.
Okay. And when did TikTok came into the picture?
Actually, a few years later, because while I was working in Coke, then I was headhunted by Philip Morris again on LinkedIn for a job that they had. Actually, it was kind of a regional project where they wanted to take young professionals, have them deployed into several markets for a few years, and then localize them somewhere to have a management position in the company in that specific market. So I actually spent almost 2 years in Switzerland working for Philip Morris, because I was initially supposed to stay 1 year and they required a new extension for me. And then afterwards, TikTok came into place. And again, they've headhunted me from LinkedIn. And they told me that they have this global community manager position based in Berlin. And if I'm willing to learn more about it.
So what does it mean to be a global community manager at TikTok?
For me, I personally love it. And out of all the jobs that I had so far, I think it's the one that fits my schedule the best and my interests. Basically, what it means it is that you're part of a team who's handling all the markets. So you're always in contact, and on your side, again, you have to handle more markets as well. And it depends, because we have people who are more specialized on content strategy, or people who are more specialized on the community side, like working with the content creators and with the celebrities, or people specialized on partnerships. But because I had to take over like smaller markets, when I joined, even Romania was a very, very small market for TikTok. I kind of had to do everything for these markets, like both the content strategy part, both the community strategy part, as well as the partnerships, brand partnerships, even events and everything related.
Can you talk about some of your goals in doing that? How did you plan on growing that small market?
So what I started doing was doing an analysis over what was happening in the market and what was the environment in terms of the app at that stage. And there wasn't too much to work on. However, an interesting part was, especially a particularity for Romania, was the fact that people were searching up for influencers or celebrities in the platform instead of keywords, like we noticed for some other markets. So basically, we decided that, okay, we're going to establish the partnerships with all the music labels in order to be able to take into the platform every singer slash celebrity that they manage, starting from, of course, the biggest ones, then to middle ones, and then to new rising stars and everything. So we had that part covered. Then we started focusing on verticals of content. And of course, in order to grow a vertical, you need to have like joint efforts coming from the content strategy part, but as well from community. So we started actually looking up which are the influencers in the market, I don't know, for gaming, for traveling, for fitness and sports and everything. So we started reaching out to them. And we also created a group, a community group, regardless of the areas of interest that they had in the beginning. And now there are more than 100 people on the group, like both the artists, celebrities, influencers, and everything. And we started even organizing get-togethers also with other artists from the labels, because what we noticed was that the content creators were mostly missing the awareness at that point in time, and the celebrities had a problem with creating content. So we realized that if we put them together, it's a win-win situation for both of them.
They're going to complete each other.
Exactly. So we started with having these offline meetings where they would create content and launch different official challenges. And then we took it step by step, and we actually reached out to different media partners, TV stations, radio stations, agencies, even brands in the very beginning, to explain more and give them more details.
Okay, so if I had to sum up from everything you've told us about your career, what I see is a little bit of a trend here. So it's more of a lot of ambition and jumping from one challenging role to another.
Yeah.
If you had any advice for somebody who's starting out or only has a few years of experience and really wants to grow their career or wants to add some big brands to their portfolio, what would that be?
First of all, I think they need to take into account the fact that it's a lot of work, regardless what you choose to do. In the very beginning, you won't earn as much money as you would expect or want to, but you always have to put that in balance. Like, for example, in the first projects that I was in the university, they were not paid. I would just went there during my summer holidays for the experience and to get to know like speakers and people from the advertising industry, and also have different mentors, get into a contact with brands. And then afterwards, you have to decide whether you're in more for the money or more for the experience. And you have to, I don't know, think it like as a puzzle, what I could do next in order to achieve my further goal, I don't know, in 5 years or 3 years or whatever time frame you decide to settle, and try to be as much up to date as you can. Like, always do your research first. For me, it was very important that regardless of what everyone told me in the very beginning, I was paying attention to the things that were important to me, like the areas where I knew I had to improve. For example, at some point I was very good on my hard skills, but on the soft skills I had to work a lot. So then I started focusing more on the soft skills as well, and it was a great learning, because it helps you grow in terms, like, if you want to become a manager further on and stuff like that. And yeah, have a super straight goal that you want to achieve.
What about taking risks? Because leaving a very stable job to join a platform like TikTok, which not many brands know about yet, can be categorized as a risk.
Yeah, actually, I'm all in terms of risk taking, but more like what's a calculated risk. So it helps if you do your research, if you understand. That's what I did when I joined TikTok. I was like looking up the company, the mother company, also the app and the evolution of it. And I was like, okay, but if you think about it in terms of switching a very established role into a very new company that's more still in terms of seen as a startup. But then how I thought of it was like, okay, but I switched from the agency, then I went into FMCG, then I went into the tobacco industry, and now I'm going into tech industry. So there are more industries, still on all of them on my area of expertise. And also what was important for me was that, okay, but I started from managing local market in Romania, then switching to the Swiss market, and now I had the opportunity to switch to more markets. So that's always a value on your profile or CV. Like when you have your experience in different markets or in different companies, it always helps.
Yes, and TikTok is becoming bigger and bigger. What I'm curious about is the fact that some brands are still rather reluctant to use it. Why do you think that is, and how could you put their mind at ease?
So basically what I think is happening, it's super normal. People in general, especially when they grow older, they're very reluctant to change. And of course they need like a proof of concept that it works. So that's what we tried to do in the very beginning by bringing in the platform all the people that we know matter for the brands, because right now if you look at the brands, most of them are doing in social media campaigns which involve influencers or content creators or artists in general. So we try to bring them all there, and then we started doing a smaller project with these guys, and also with, let's say, I don't know, partners who are more open-minded and more used to switching platforms, in order to give them some best practices and some examples. What I always recommend to the brands is, right now basically you have no cost other than, of course, the creative cost, in order to test some platforms. And it's much easier if you go from the very beginning of a platform and try to test it out, to see if it works for you, to see even if your audience is there or not, rather than try catching up after a few years. Like all the brands had this problem when like Facebook appeared in the very beginning, then when Instagram started growing, when YouTube started growing, and it took them a while to be able to bring their accounts to a specific level. Then they noticed that they have to invest quite a lot of money in order to perform different actions.
So it's better to join TikTok now and focus on TikTok marketing now before the competition becomes overwhelming, pretty much.
Yeah, I think it should be part, like TikTok should be seen as a channel of communication, and it should be part of an, let's say, 360 strategy, rather than okay, I'm going on TikTok, then I'm not focusing anymore on that platforms. It's not about that, because people are actually using all the platforms all together. The only difference is the time they spend in each one of them, and that's something you could work on.
As a short recap, I've been talking to Laura Savu, Global Community Manager at TikTok. Laura has been very generously offering a ton of TikTok insights that any social media professional can now apply directly to the brands they're managing, especially if they want to take them to TikTok. But we're not done yet. Keep listening and find out how to make the best out of this platform. Okay, and who uses TikTok? Brands and audience alike?
So basically, in terms of both brands and audiences, it's very diversified, because that was important for us, and it was one of the main goals from the very beginning. We had two main goals: aging up the population in TikTok, because whether we like it or not, we took over the app from Musical.ly. The predominant fan base or the user base actually was focused on teenagers. So of course, if you want to grow a product to a mass market one, you have to bring in people who are like older who have different tastes and are focusing on different categories. And the other one was to be able to find all sorts of content that someone might be interested in. And that's why we started focusing on growing the verticals one per one. And it's the same basically for brands as well. You have brands from tech, brands from fashion, from beauty that use it, from telecom companies, from FMCG, of course, even cars, even sports brands. It has become, especially in the past year, a place for everyone.
What would be your pitch? What does TikTok have and that the other platforms don't?
I think what it has in terms of a product is the possibility of doing editing directly into the app. So you have different tools that you can use, and it's quite useful because it actually reduces the time spent on creating a video. Of course, the video is a short form one, but it's very helpful rather than filming, editing, and then uploading into any kind of app that you take into account. And then it helps because you don't have the barrier of followers. So for example, I don't need to follow your account in order to be able to see some of your content. And the focus is always on the content rather than on the account.
So this would translate into higher engagement because TikTok is known to have much higher engagement than the other platforms. Do you have any data on this internally?
Yeah, so basically in terms of reach, it's much higher than the other platforms. Like it's around 45 to 50%. And in terms of engagement, the overall engagement per video, it's around 30%.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah, and we're trying to keep all the users engaged. Like 80% of them have posted at least one video, and 50% of them had posted at least one video in the past month. And now we're focusing more since the pandemic started, even on live streams, and we're trying to offer more support on this side as well.
So it's a much bigger opportunity to get your brand noticed from what you say.
Yeah.
Okay, brands are starting to realize that engagement is very high on TikTok, and this is not a platform that's going to disappear anytime soon. But what should they know before they join?
I think what they should know is that they don't need to change their type of content. They just need to find a way into reshuffling that content into, of course, a vertical format. Also, we're very keen on native content and native product integration. So we're not at all focused on having the classical ads into the platform because we think that would be very disruptive for the content environment and it wouldn't be as efficient. Of course, creativity helps a lot. And then what's also important is what do they want to achieve from this platform. Like they could go for, I don't know, awareness, they could go for conversion even, or they could go simply for obtaining some UGC that they could use into different campaigns.
So could they use a regular video that they would normally create for Instagram and place it on TikTok as well, or should they make any adjustments?
Well, it should be more like what they would use on Instagram stories, I would say, rather than Instagram feed as a format. Of course, every platform has its particularities, and it's always better if you create content specific for that platform, but then it depends on the overall abilities of the brand to create new content and focus on new content. But they could work with different content creators that help on that side.
So you would suggest starting through partnerships and collaborations with influencers and content creators?
No, I would actually suggest them more like starting organically and testing different types of content, like, I don't know, take a video that you filmed 2 years ago from a specific campaign, take one you posted on the Insta stories 1 week ago, and see which one is more responsive, and then try to create an overall strategy of content. And what also helps is if you're focusing on a vertical of content, so you need to be very precise in terms of what you want to explore, but that's more useful for content creators because they have the tendency of going into more verticals rather than the brands, which are much clearer on that side. And also to try to find a format that works for you. Like we see different accounts where they have the same format. It's like a template format, and just the information changes from one video to the other. And actually those ones are the best performing ones because when you see a video, you automatically recognize it that it's coming from that person or that brand. And that's always very helpful.
I also wanted to ask you a little bit about TikTok for business and why it's necessary for brands.
Yeah.
Why create a business account instead of just a regular account, especially if exposure is going to be big on either side?
So the reason why we created TikTok for business is, first of all, to offer some brands, I would say, a little help in terms of education on what are the possibilities into the platform. And then, of course, if you have a business account, then you can focus more on advertising as well and use the advertising formats, which, of course, are not available for a regular user. So that would be the only difference, I would say.
And any tips for starting off TikTok marketing campaigns? I don't know, maybe pick a certain performing genre, like there are a lot of comedies, challenges, lip syncing videos. Is that something that would work for a brand, or should they be more in line to their brand guidelines?
I think they should always be in line with their brand DNA. Like, for example, I don't know, if you're a beauty company, of course, there's no point in going into creating a lip sync or a dance or comedy challenge. It should create one which is related to beauty. Same for any other types of categories. But then you have more versatile products as well. Like, for example, if you're focusing on tech as a company, you could go into comedy because they're kind of related and they could go well together. But you always have to have in the back of your mind the brand DNA and what do you want to achieve. Like, if you simply want to create awareness, then yeah, it's fine to go for something that's more like viral comedy meme related. But if you want to, I don't know, like user generated content, then it should be more specific for your type of brand so you can use it externally. Or if you want to obtain conversions, then I think that's the most challenging one because you have to find a way that's still creative, that still integrates the product, but that will also increase the user's appeal to the brand to actually click and make a purchase.
The interesting thing is that I've read and heard a lot of people saying that I can't go on TikTok because I'm not a goofy person. I don't like to goof around and be funny. I'm not funny. Our brand is not funny. So what would you say to those people?
That it's not at all about being funny. Basically, they come to this perception because they saw that the content which went viral so far is the funny or comedy related one or lip syncing or dancing one.
Exactly.
Because that's the easiest one to create to begin with. And of course, when an app is at the very beginning, users create whatever is the easiest for them. And then when the app starts growing, you have users which are creating other types of content which are more challenging from a creative perspective. And of course, if you want to become part of an app, you shouldn't change your content. Like right now, I could give them examples from any kind of vertical of content because we have it. Like we have science and education, we have technology, we have traveling, we have cooking, we have beauty tutorials, we have skincare tutorials, we even have like doctors in the platform. We have the National Army of Romania, for example. We have now the Ministry of Education as well. So it's kind of different and the platform is evolving. So they should, from my perspective, they should leave aside their initial perception and try to deep dive into content.
Okay, so TikTok is evolving. The future is not comedy and it's moving towards a more brand-oriented perspective.
Yeah, and actually, comedy is always going to be an area of interest because if you look into the psychology of the masses, people want to consume entertaining content. Like we watch TV, we go on the internet, we still want to have a laugh over a full day of work or I don't know problems in the family or taking care of the kids and whatever. So that's still a very important category, but that doesn't mean it's the only one or that you should completely change your whole strategy and brand just into that category.
I think that clears things up for a lot of people. And since we talked a lot about what type of content to post, what about some insider tricks? Like how many hashtags should you use? Because on Instagram, for instance, this is a big question. How many hashtags should you use? How should you use them? Examples of top performing hashtags and stuff like that.
Yeah, so basically, in terms of hashtags and how they work in the platform, is that every day we're launching a new trend, which is linked to a hashtag, and that can be found into the discovery page. And the trends are again coming from multiple categories of content. So basically, you don't need more than one hashtag on your post, and it should be related to that specific trend. Like, for example, if you're, I don't know, in the beauty field and we launch tomorrow a hashtag related to beauty, it's totally fine to jump on that one. But you don't have to follow all the hashtags. And actually, if you post on a specific hashtag, you just have a small increase in the awareness and virality of the video just because it's an official trend launched in that specific time frame. But we have millions of viral posts which have no hashtag whatsoever. Of course, the ideal playground for the content creators and for brands as well is to be able to launch your own hashtag or to think of a concept and you link it to a hashtag, whatever hashtag you want, and then people can start reusing that hashtag.
But if you're posting with a very trending hashtag, don't they run the risk of having so many posts using that hashtag that their message gets somewhat lost in the feed?
Not really, because the feed is different for everyone. So the For You feed is actually a machine learning that's very specified and it's learning your behaviors of consumption of content. So for example, my For You feed is never going to be the same as yours because, for example, if I'm interested in, I don't know, extreme sports and animals and then some beauty, then I'll have content like that. If you're more interested, I don't know, into comedy or daily life or cooking or even sports and fitness, your feed will be more optimized for you. And it's the same for everyone and even for brands.
What about soundtracks? How do you select the best soundtrack, or should you create your own soundtrack? Does that have an impact on performance?
So, of course, it does. Basically, what we're trying to do is have a music library that can be used by all users. When you're a brand, and that's regardless of the platform, you should have commercial rights for that specific song. And we're not guaranteeing them commercial rights. We actually have a different playlist for brands where they have songs with commercial rights. Then they could work with an artist or even create their own sound or upload the jingle of the brand into the platform. That's totally fine. And for the user, if you manage to create a new sound or a new song from scratch and it goes viral, of course it's better for you. And we had this kind of examples even from local artists in Romania who have created new songs or new sounds and they went viral overnight.
So going for a more personalized approach is definitely best.
Yeah, it helps because it gives you more awareness.
Okay. You also say don't make ads, make TikToks. What's behind the slogan?
We are far away from the classical advertising ads where you have the brand logo super full screen and then some brand elements or the products and this kind of it. We're looking more for a native integration of the product.
But if you were to create any ads, how would you go about it?
I would try to think of the moment of consumption of that brand. Of course, you have to have defined the persona that's using your product and when are they consuming the products? Are they consuming it, I don't know, when they want to relax or when they're very stressed, or when they want to do impulse buying, or different kind of situations. And then you can adapt the content. You can go into even on sketches showcasing the moments of consumption.
So the takeaway here would be to contextualize everything.
Yeah, of course.
What about any challenges or difficulties that you may come across on TikTok as a brand, of course?
I think the challenges for the brands right now is, first of all, the creative agencies, or try to add another layer into the process that they already have ongoing with different agencies. We saw that there are more and more agencies coming up into the markets which are actually becoming specialized in creating content for TikTok. So that's always useful. Also, brands, they find it challenging because you're talking about the video. Most of the times you need a front person in the video, so they're not sure whether it should be an employee, whether it should be someone from the agency, or whether they should just use influencers. And yeah, I think that's kind of it for them. And to try to integrate the platform in their full marketing plans or full digital strategy.
Any suggestions for that?
So basically, I think that they need to start from an overview strategy, like what do they want to obtain and how they are declining that campaign into different platforms, even taking it offline, of course, when it's possible. So basically, they need to look at this whole environment and platforms as touch points for the users. And they would need to, again, create the profile of the persona. So, for example, I don't know, my customer, I know he's waking up early morning because he needs to go to work. He's consuming some social media or platforms, like whether reading news or listening to podcasts on the way to the work. Then they have the lunch break, and where they're discussing with other colleagues on what's coming up new, whether they go after work to grab a drink with some friends or they discuss it with the family. So you need to make a specific time frame and timeline of what's happening into your consumer's life in order to make sure that you're giving them touch points along the day.
Okay, so to sum up everything very quickly, what would this TikTok marketing mix include? It would include collaborations with influencers,
Yeah.
repurposing content to fit TikTok,
Yeah.
maybe some ads as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for how often a brand should post on TikTok?
Well, in terms of posting, we've seen different examples. Of course, the more you post, the more chances of getting more noticed you have. For example, some of our very top creators, they're posting even 15 videos per day. But then we have other ones who are just posting one per day or who are posting every 2 days. And here it only depends on your resources, I would say.
So there's no one formula fits all.
No, that's for sure.
If you were still at Coca-Cola or any large company, what would be your pitch of convincing your bosses to invest and join TikTok?
I think it would be that catching up is really expensive. And as long as you have the opportunity to test any kind of platform, even if it's TikTok or if it's a new one coming in the markets today, I would still be full on testing everything and then see what actually makes sense for the brand. And if you can do this testing at this super low cost of going into the platform organically and having, I don't know, one community manager dedicated for that, I don't see why you wouldn't.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Especially when in terms of satisfaction, and I know brands and agencies as well have seen different changes regarding platforms where first of all they had to buy followers, then they had to buy additional advertising to reach those followers, and so on. So
which are not exactly white hat tactics.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But what about those more traditional companies that usually just like to play it safe and they use a more serious tone of voice? I don't know, like any company that doesn't really take risks.
Yeah, well, I think that companies, whether they are serious or not, if they're not taking risks, they have a few things to lose, especially in the society that we live in, because things are changing very fast. And also, the clients are more educated and they're more pretentious in what they expect from a brand. So they should take into consideration that aspect. And of course, if they consider that any kind of platform is not suited for their brand, that's totally fine. But they need to think from their client's perspective or customer's perspective instead of their own, because there's a very huge difference in how internal people are perceiving the brand and how the customers are perceiving the same brand.
Yes, there's sometimes this disconnect.
Yeah.
What should we be expecting from TikTok in the future? Like 3 things.
So first of all, the most important one is still investing into technology and product features. So updating the product constantly. And basically how TikTok looks now, probably in 6 months, it's going to be very different on having different opportunities to offer. Another very important aspect for us is focusing on safety in the platform and creating a safe environment for everyone. And then it's also the development of content. For example, until the end of this year, one of our major goals is to focus more on having educational content in the platform, regardless if it's pure education or if it's education related to different areas of interest. Also, we're focusing a lot on live streams and to be able to offer more options, both for content creators, also for artists, and also for brands. Like we're trying to take into consideration every time when we're thinking about a project, the whole environment and the people which are basically creating the platform.
There's no stopping it. The future will be including a lot of TikTok.
Yeah, and we actually saw this trend. Like even for me, it's 1 year now since I joined the company, and when I initially joined, the whole environment and approach was totally different than it is today. Like in the very beginning, I told you we were reaching out to brands to explaining them more, and now there are like different brands from all areas of expertise reaching out to us like, hey, we want to learn more about it. Like,
Okay. Up next is our fire round. Pretty much I'll be laying out a series of social media terms or scenarios. In this case, it's going to be about TikTok. And you need to choose as quickly as possible the one that you believe in the most.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay, so combine TikTok efforts with Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube.
I would combine it with Instagram at this point in time.
Paid versus organic.
Organic.
Short captions versus long captions.
Short.
No hashtags or a hashtag invasion.
No hashtags.
Posting too often or barely posting.
Posting too often.
Trendy songs or original soundtracks.
Original soundtracks.
Following trends or trying original content.
Original content always.
Challenges for brands, yay or nay?
Yes.
As a genre.
Yeah.
Comedy for brands, yay or nay?
Depends on the brand. So I would say yes, but with some question marks.
Heavily filtered videos or natural clips?
Natural ones.
Informative versus fun?
Informative.
Okay, that's a pretty cool insight, a pretty cool picture.
Yeah, and for the last question, I would say that what we noticed is that if you manage to combine informative with fun, then that's quite a good recipe for success.
Do you have any plans going on? Anything on the radar?
So, as I've mentioned before, right now our main plan is focusing on educational, and it's a global project that we already launched in several markets, also in the markets that I'm taking care of, because we want to empower the informative part of the content, of course. We're also focusing a lot on the creators, and that's why we've announced recently the creators funds both for the US and also for Europe. And I'm very happy to say that Romania will also take part of this project, because we've we've received several questions from the creators. Then, of course, there will be a lot of focus on helping the brands getting involved into the platform and try to offer them solutions. And that's why we launched TikTok for Business as well, where they can find different webinars and learning more. A lot of focus will be on live streams and the opportunities that you have during the live streams. Of course, we're still maintaining a part that's very essential for us, which is the music partnerships. Other than that, it would be that we want to be able to localize as much as possible and to be market relevant in all the countries.
That's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it and got to know TikTok a little better, and maybe even started thinking about joining your brand to the platform. You can find Laura and the Social Insider team on social with the links below. And don't forget to check out our blog for more social media info and data-based findings. Until next time, keep an eye on those insights.